we don't have a lot of control over really. We could go to another website company and might be save £100 or whatever, but by and large, it's not that easy to change. Bank charges we have no control over. The clerk's gratuity, which is effectively the clerk's pension, which we're obliged to provide, is on the old scheme where the clerk, when he retires, gets a gratuity amount, lump sum. It's not deemed as a pension. And it's part of an old scheme that was one of the last ones on the back of. Now it will be a pension contribution. So that just goes up 3.75% of the annual salary. Chairman's allowance, again, that can be changed, can be altered. Training fees can be altered. Election fee reserve fund, yeah, that would be changed if we didn't feel that was appropriate. Room hire fees, depending on how many meetings we have. We had a lot this year, of course. So you could say, well, actually, probably might be slightly less next year. We don't know. Maybe there are shop build meetings this year. And then community support can be anything you want it to be, basically, and cover anything you want it to be. So that's the admin side of it, which again, as I say, got limited scope for change.
And again, if councillors were looking at the one we sent out, we made two slight adjustments to this one.
Yes.
We took the office and expenses back to what we spent this year. Yeah. We felt we were being too optimistic to take it back to the previous budget. So we put it in for the budget to be spent. And if you notice on the other one, there is, in the original document, we put insurance at 1,300.
Yeah.
But that was, you've got an insurance quote now, and it's come down a bit.
That's what I put down.
There was savings there. Yeah. So those two numbers will be slightly different from the original quote.
Yeah. So
one thing also just mentioning, we mentioned the election reserve fund. Basically, if we had a contested election in the parish, if it happens at the same time as the council, the sort of Somerset Council elections, we split the fees 50-50, but we have to pay for our election costs, which would probably be in excess of £1,000. Now, if we had a by-election that took place apart from the council's election, we have to pay the whole costs. So we would be looking at well over £2,000 probably for a parish of this size, because you pay for the staff to come in the polling station, you pay for all the ballot papers, the postage, the whole lot gets paid by the council. So what we've done over the years, we put a small amount aside each year, so there is you'll see in the reserves, there is an election reserve now, so were we to have that, we're covered, whereas a few years ago, had we had an election call, we'd have suddenly had a £2,000 bill and nothing actually to pay it with, so that's why we put a little bit in every year.
So, is there anything you'd like to change in there that perhaps you think we should consider? Or are you happy with that pretty well as it is? Now, village costs is really where you have much more impact on that, because it comes into things like general maintenance and special projects, which tend to be the two big items there. You can see the village green. I anticipate this year 1945 will end up, so I've just written in there 2000. Churchyard contract does remain constant year in, year out. I should also say that Jason hasn't actually put his fees up for the church contract for quite a long time. In fact, it's been several years since Jason actually increased fees.
I think it was my first choice, 4 years ago.
Yeah. So that's play inspection, of course, is our monthly inspection by GB Sports, plus the annual inspection. General maintenance covers, again, part of Jason's contract, which is village maintenance, where we're anticipating 232 for this year. So, 3.5 seemed like a reasonable starting point to start off with. Build project this year, well, of course, we won't have that next year. We set a little bit of a fund in there for any extras that came out of the build project, which, as I say, we won't have this year. The SID services, they have gone up a bit actually, because with the ANPR as well, Nichols does more in this regard now. He does a lot more of the work than he used to do, moving stuff around, and gives us more reports.
Because in effect he's now handling 3
Yeah.
units.
Yeah.
So,
So that's why that's gone a little bit higher this year. Special projects, and you may well ask what special projects are. Well, this time it's the tree removal, the stone mason work up on the knoll, Hill Lane gate, gate, and some contingency for the rear of the church, the water. What would you describe
there
that
was the damage that was done to the footpath behind the church. So it's not church land. It's a footpath that was gouged out, and we're looking at what we can do with a project there with Somerset Rivers Authority.
So the 7,000, I've just written in £7,000 there, which is just a shade under where we are this year. You may have to change that. Dog rubbish bin collections, 2,400. I suspect that Somerset are looking at those costs as well, like they are everything else. So I suspect there's a little bit of an increase possibly due there. Loan interest payments, which are in fixed, no choice there. That's 11,619. That's exactly what they'll cost us in 2025-26. And the play reserve fund, which we've been putting in each year for the last 2 or 3 years, 2,500. So that goes in there again for next year, unless again you wish to increase that, or whatever you want to do there.
You just skip over one, which was footpath maintenance, which that's been increased, as you can see, considerably above what the budget was this year. On the basis of, I think, from our discussions earlier, it's obvious we're going to have more works that we're going to need to do, so we need to have some funding in there to pay for it.
Yeah.
So Bob, for us, the 3 arbitrary numbers of the 7,000, the 2,000, the 2,500, are numbers that we can raise or lower at our discretion.
Yeah. I mean, you can do any of it. I mean, you're the council, you're in control of the budget.
Yeah, but they're the main ones.
But they're the main ones that you can really affect. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, anything I've written on the right-hand side, it's just my starting point. That's all. It's not, give it life, actually. Really.
I mean, in terms of the 7,000, we have just had some correspondence back from the gentleman who came out to look at the drainage works, because what they're looking to do is, you remember we talked about doing the resurfacing of the footpath, but the danger was we'd do it all and then suddenly we'd have another downpour and the whole lot would get washed away. So we have had some feedback from him coming up with some suggestions as to work that can be done on the landowner's land above the footpath to slow the water's flow. He's basically said he thinks he can get funding for a lot of that won't come on to us, but he's less happy that he can get funding for stuff that's actually on the footpath itself. So we need to put some money into that so that we can sort of, it's not match fund, but we can be seen to be contributing to the whole project if he's looking to get grants from other bodies.
Yeah. And the 7,000 came back from your original view of how much that was going to cost us, wasn't it? So it was based on some fact.
Correct.
And things do crop up during the year. I mean, things often.
But that's why we've got those flexes in there, isn't it? So we can move stuff around.
Yeah. And as I said on Saturday, once you set the precept, you're stuck with it. You can't go for some more. Say, well, we're having a bit of a tough year, we're going to go for another 3,000. You can only do that once a year, so that's the important thing. Operation cost of toilet block, of course, increased 4,500. I mean, forecast this year 3,175. That includes doing the cleaning at the rate that you've agreed for the remainder of this year. There were some repairs done to the toilet block earlier on, so that figure is higher than it should have been. We had 2 major call-outs in the old toilet block. And then, of course, we also had the big energy costs, which we had to pay up front. Now, we did get them back as income from the shop, but we had to pay them up front. So this is why the 3,175 is higher than perhaps it should have been for this year. So therefore, you might say, well, is 4,500 enough if we're going to have this big cleaning contract? Well, it is on a normal year if we didn't have all the repairs to do. So I've worked it out with water, with energy contribution, and with cleaning contract. 4,500 should do it.
And again, from our document, that's gone up because we're into a new contract.
Yeah, exactly. And then finally, the grants section. We don't really do any section 37s, but 137. But yeah, the grants. We've been consistent on that budget for the last 3 or 4 years. Actually, £1,450. I forecast that we will complete for £1,450. That will be a question for you to decide in January once we've got the grant applications in. We don't always use the full amount. Sometimes we only use 1,000 of it, or 700 or 800. Just depends who applies.
Yeah. And again, at this time of year, it gets it's a bit complicated in terms of we're obviously talking about we're talking about the budget now. We're talking about the precept in December. We then notify Somerset in January so that they'll build it into their bills. But this is relating to the budget for, in effect, April next year. So when we give out grants in January of next year, that's still coming out of this year's budget. It's not coming out of next year's budget because that doesn't kick in until later on. So that's why it looks like we've not spent very much this year on the grant so far. It's because we wait until the end of the year to
in fact, that 250 that's in there was a hangover from last financial year because we had a problem with the air ambulance where they gave us the wrong sort code, the wrong count number, and I suddenly discovered they hadn't actually cashed it in April when we'd actually paid it in January. So it will be a hangover. So otherwise it would have been zero in there. Just to give you a guide on precept, if you accepted that budget as it stands, and if we kept our reserves at about 4 months expenditure, your precept would need to go up by about 10% to 66,000. So that gives you just a guide before it comes to the December meeting. That's roughly what we're looking at on that budget with those reserves. We're looking at about 66,000. And this year, as I say, it's 60,000. So it's about just a straight 10% increase. So it's over to you.
And ultimately, the main reason for that is we're being asked to take on more responsibilities, and that's.
There's your budget. This year's forecast 59,000, budget 65,000, and then that drops into the precept calculations at a given point. So it's been an unusual year really because we've had these two things competing with each other, two separate budgets. We'll come on to the build budget in a minute, but that, we've been competing with two different lots of figures.
But obviously post this meeting, all this, I'm bringing we'll circulate this to all members anyway so they can have a further perusal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Before we get to the actual setting next month.
Yeah. So, any comments? We're fortunate we don't have to fill a £22 billion budget. Okay, so we've got the shop. Okay. Yeah, separate. Let's go on a bit. On my IT skills. Build budget, again, it's income first of all. When we started at the beginning of the year, this is the sort of income we were expecting. PWLB loans budget, 159,900. The reason why it wasn't 160,000 because they took an administration fee. So it's actually a bit less than we originally went for. It's £100 less over the piece. Shop contributions, that was from the section 14, 26,000. Grants, there was nothing in there for grants. Other income was nothing in there for. And then we had the VAT reclaim. So that was a total of 230. And then we allocated 50,000 of reserves. That was from the SIL fund and one or two other bits and pieces. And the whole thing came to a 281,225.60 budget. Now up to now, we've actually got in on that income 249,000 598. So the only bit that's still to come in is the VAT, some of the VAT. Because we've still got remains of the builder payments to make, and we're also waiting for a 9,000 repayment from.
Which is the difference between the actual and the
Yeah.
forecast.
So that's where we were in terms of income and funding. Expenditure costs, obviously we had the contractor fees, which was 266,000, including VAT. Paul Martin's fees at 10.5. Financial advice, we didn't have any budget for, but we did actually incur some costs there.
That's the VAT advice, wasn't it, we took?
That was Westcott's for the, they looked at the Ashley's account, didn't they, to make sure that we were, we were dealing with somebody who was, financially sound. And then legal fees, Holly and Steer, 4,500, and up to now, we're running at 141,000.
Does that include the £1,000 we voted on today?
No, it doesn't include anything we've done today at all, because this only goes up to the end of October. So it's October 31st cut off for these figures.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.